Halloween is right around the corner, and it's time to play the 5 scariest board games of all time.
What are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing a video intro.
What for? Halloween?
Yeah, it's like creepy games. Ooh.
Oh, okay. You want to turn the light off?
Yes, please.
Okay.
That's right, Halloween is nearly upon us, and it's time to talk about great games to play this time of year. Before we get into that, make sure to thumb this video up, subscribe to the Brothers Murph if you're new. I'm Mike, and let's get into some creepy games. So number 5 is a game called Gloom. This is the definition of macabre. It's all about having a family of people who you're hoping to inflict as much suffering on as possible before killing them. You want them to have an untimely death after a series of tragic events to lower their self-worth, and literally, if your family has the lowest self-worth of all, you win. So in this game, you are playing modifier cards and stuff, which will be like, they got stood up at a wedding, or they were widowed at a wedding, or they got chastised by the queen and things like that, which will lower their self-worth. And there's also modifiers that are happy occasions, like went to a parade and stuff. And you can play those on your opponent's family members so that they are too happy. You want your opponents to be as happy as possible. You want to be as sad as possible, and then have your people get killed off in horrible ways. There are event cards you can play, which will help you modify your hand of cards and things that you can play and do different things to the kind of game state. And ultimately, you're trying to wipe out your family members at the right time when they're the most sad possible before your opponent can go in and make you all happy and stuff by like going to therapy and whatnot. Who wants that? That's number 5, Gloom. So number 4 is a cooperative game called Horrified. There is also Horrified American Monsters. There's 2 versions. This is a game where you're ultimately going to be facing off against some baddies. In the original Horrified, you're going against the Universal movie monsters like Frankenstein and the Bride and the Mummy and the Invisible Man or the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Each monster that you go against, and you can go against many, they all have different goals and things that you need to kind of accomplish to overcome them. It's ultimately a pick up and deliver game. There's gonna be all sorts of items that are strewn about the board, and you need to go to the right locations to pick up those items, because you usually will be caused to turn in items in a certain way of a certain color or value in order to kind of work on the puzzle that that monster provides. The Creature for the Black Lagoon, you need to traverse a little boat through the swamps, and you need to turn in the right colors in order to be able to move your boat forward before you can then go and overcome the Creature from the Black Lagoon. You'll usually fight off against 3 monsters or maybe more if you want more of a challenge. It's really fun. Each player comes with a little bit of a power. If you play something like Pandemic, it feels very familiar. You have like 4 action points and a little special thing you can only do that your opponents, or rather your teammates, I should say, cannot. And you're trying to go around and escape these monsters before they do too much damage and raise terror in the city, which can cause you to lose the game. This is a really fun one. These are characters that we're super familiar with. And the American Monsters version gives you things like Bigfoot and Mothman, all sorts of cryptids to go against, which have their own individual puzzles as well. Both are really great. That's number 4, Horrified. Number 3 is all about running a hotel where you realize it'll be much more better and easy for you if you just kill your guests and take their money. This is the Bloody Inn. This is a game that, again, kind of like Gloom, very macabre, where you are running an inn and you are having a bunch of guests come and you're putting them into rooms, and if it's profitable for you, you're gonna kill them and bury them in the floorboards, and they will be worth money. Then you're basically picking their pockets before they go. One thing that's really cool is that it's kind of a tight hand management game where you're paying cards to do different types of actions. The more powerful or valuable the card is, the more cards and things you have to spend from your hand in order to make use of that card. But there are all sorts of different colors, and each of them will help you with a certain aspect of the game. Like the blue cards will help you recruit guests from the little display in the middle of the table. That makes that cheaper for you. There's folks that can help you get rid of a body and bury people for cheaper. There are the nobles, which serve no purpose. They're just super rich and therefore valuable, and you want to take their money. And so this is kind of tight balance of hand management. What cards do you want to keep? What cards do you want to spend? And things like that to kind of do dark deeds and stuff. There are cops in the game that if you have a body that hasn't been buried and they're in the room, they're going to come investigate and they're not going to like it. You can, of course, pay them off. It's very easy. Or instead, you can recruit those cops into your hand, and they're also going to help you do these dark deeds. Everyone can be bought in this game, but it's really fun to kind of lean into that darkness a little bit and run a very haunted and dark hotel. That's the Bloody Inn. So number 2 is all about brewing potions, specifically potions to create ingredients that overwhelm your opponent. This is Whirling Witchcraft. This is the same artist that made The Bloody Inn, Weberson Santiago. They do a good job with kind of Halloween-y style. Their style is just so unique and it comes out really well. So in Whirling Witchcraft, you are brewing up potions and stuff. You're using spiders and mushrooms and toads and things to make kind of recipes where you're going to be turning in cubes. You're going to take them off your little workstation. You're going to be turning them into different types of ingredients. Sometimes, 2 of one color will produce 3 of another. And that's ultimately going to go into your cauldron, and your cauldron's going to get passed to the player on your right, I believe, or the left, I think it's the right. And they're going to have to then take those cubes and put them onto their workstation. The only problem is your workstation only has so many spaces for each of the different color of ingredients. And if they cannot put it onto their workstation, they have to give that cube back to you, which effectively becomes a victory point. And you're racing to get 5 of those cubes onto your winner's circle before any other player can do it. So this is an engine building game. Every round, you're also going to draft cards. You're going to choose a new recipe to put out into your little tableau. And those are different spots for you to put your ingredients, create more ingredients for your cauldron, and then pass it down the way. Now, of course, I'm trying to overwhelm my opponent to the right, but I have an opponent to my left who's trying to overwhelm me. So I have to build an engine that can do things that my opponent cannot handle, but I also need an engine that can handle the stuff that's coming in, all the inundation of materials and resources. So it's a really fun kind of idea of like, let me build something specifically to overwhelm my opponent. I can produce so many spiders. You've never seen the amount of mandrakes like this before in your life. You can't handle those mandrakes and cause a victory that way. It's got a great theme. It's the cauldrons are cool looking and stuff. It's just a great Halloween kind of vibe. It's fun. It's silly. There's a little bit of player powers with the witches and things like that. Really, really fun game that you can play over and over because the game is quite quick. That's Whirling Witchcraft. So number 1 is number 1 because this is a game, if you want to really get into a scary place, it's a game that kind of makes you feel what we all start off as, afraid of the dark. This is the Night Cage. This is a game where you're in a kind of magical labyrinth and you are trying to escape, sort of like a prison for yourself. Now, the only problem is there's very little light. You can only really see right around you because you're carrying this ever dwindling candle, which represents the light you can see. So you can only see where you are and what's immediately adjacent to you. And you are trying to traverse these different tiles to find keys and then ultimately the exit and get the heck out of here before monsters come get you, because there are monsters that lurk in the dark. What's really fun is when you move and you want to go to you find out what's down this pathway, you can move and then you reveal tiles that are, again, now directly adjacent to you because you can only see your immediate proximity. And you don't know which way the labyrinth will turn, how things are going to face. If there's a monster all of a sudden you go bumping into in the night, you don't know what's going to come. And if you go down the way, the tiles that you had walked down disappear. So now if you go back that way, the labyrinth might not be as you remembered it. It might now have twists and turns that you didn't expect, or pits, or again, monsters in the dark. You need to make sure that you're not in the line of sight of monsters at the end of your turn, all the players, because they will attack in basically anything they can see because they're searching out those little candle lights. And that kind of sets you back. You have to kind of get your candle relit. You're in a panic mode. You're running around in the literal dark at that point. It does a great job of evoking that feeling of, I can't see, I don't have information, I don't know what's going on, because when you flip over a tile, you never know what you're going to get. And it does a great job of actually becoming a little bit tense. So I recommend you play this game in the dark, light some candles just enough to see what's on the board, and really settle into that feeling of dread that comes with all of a sudden not having resources like light, which we are very, very used to. That is number 1, the Night Cage, the best possible game to really get into the kind of scary headspace that Halloween tends to bring along. So it's just 5 great games that we like to play around this time of year when things get a little bit spooky and haunted and whatnot. What are some games that you really like to play around Halloween? In the fall, the light changes, it's getting darker earlier, it gets a little bit crisp and cool in the air, and maybe the spirits walk this plane. What are games that you like to play when you want to evoke those feelings of kind of Halloween? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I am Mike. Those are 5 great games to play this Halloween. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching the best games to play this Halloween. Again, I want to know what you're trying to play during this most haunted time of year. Speaking of things that aren't so haunted, but more just radical because they got vibes and stuff, Small World Gaming and Evan Miller is this month's channel sponsor. And they do these silent unboxings to music. It's just vibes. You get to see the components clearly with some bit of information, but none of the extra chatter, the things that we do too much of over here on this channel. Check out Small World Gaming today right here on YouTube. And a big thanks to our Season 5 sponsors, Lucky Duck Games, Board Game Geek, and of course, Restoration Games.